note of them, and if you do have your mobile phone, if we could just make sure that's switched to silent, that would be great. We'll move through to opening karakia. Whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei, muriora. Moving through to apologies, I've received apologies from Councillors Barrett and Councillor Shaw. I'll move that we accept those apologies, seconded by Councillor Briggs. Sorry, yes?
Potentially early departure for myself if the meeting drags on.
Yep, we can, we'll make sure it doesn't drag on, but we'll note that. We'll note that down if you depart.
No pressure.
And we have, so that's been moved, seconded by Councillor Briggs. All those in favour say aye. Those against no, declare that carried. And just noting Councillor Tupou is joining us via Zoom. Okay, so now we have public comment, and we do have a couple of members of the public who do wish to speak. First up is Quinton Duthie. Welcome, Quinton. And Quinton is speaking to item 7A, Community Connections Program, Avalon and Taita. Over to you, Quinton.
Good afternoon, councillors and me, Barry. Thank you. I, as usual, wear two hats. I'm an individual resident and ratepayer who walks, bikes and drives in the area of those Taita, Avalon, Nainai connections on your agenda. And I'm also a Greater Wellington Regional Councillor. So first thing is our regional public transport plan submissions closed this Friday. So I expect to see a submission from you all. Thank you very much. Look forward to you coming in. So just as myself, so my kids are at Nainai Intermediate and Nainai College, and they bike from Belmont down through Avalon Park and through to the school there. So I'm very pleased to see these connections being improved for the safety of children and everyone else who uses those areas, and that will encourage the appeal of more people to move in active modes around those communities. We have in the past tried to bike from home to Fraser Park and Walter Nash Stadium for sports, and it's very unfriendly to get from the river trail near Fraser Park across to the Walter Nash Stadium and along at Fraser Park as well. So pleased to see improvements in that area, and I'll speak to specifically one as well. So on that, actually, there are two, at the moment the proposal is to remove the raised dual crossing at the near the corner of Taita Drive and Harcourt Wherry, in part because there's the path from there to the river trail is problematic now with trees, and I think it's paragraph 10 in your order paper. As soon as I saw that, I spoke to Greater Wellington officers, and I understand there's a possible way forward there. So I firmly encourage you to do what you need to do to keep open that option of that raised crossing, which will require a speed limit reduction, I think, to that area. So not easy in the current climate, and connecting that through to the main river trail path, which is very well used. There are two raised crossings proposed to be made level crossings, the one outside the front of Nainai College, 897 High Street, and the one outside Nainai Station on Oxford Terrace. And I just wonder whether you reconsider whether raised is actually, despite the extra cost and the political difficulty with that, is justified there. Those are arterial routes with high traffic. There's a lot of children moving in those places, as well as public transport passengers. And just like the raised crossing outside Taita Station, they would serve an important safety function. So I think there is a justification for retaining a raised crossing at those points. I support road level crossings in Walters Street because that's already got speed humps and is one lower, it's quite high traffic actually at pick up and drop off times, but it's a lower speed route. One more thing, if I may. So in the Greater Wellington Te Awa Kairangi Hutt Valley Subcommittee, which Deputy Mayor Lewis and Councillor Edwards sit on, We've been doing a piece of work on the River Trail and how Greater Wellington can improve key sections of that over time, and including the connections on and off the River Trail from the city transport networks, both in Upper Hutt and Lower Hutt. So I hope that's on your radar, and that one of the reasons this Fraser Park one jumped out was because it's one of the ones identified in that initial scoping report as a weakness, and this seems to be an opportunity to resolve that. That's all I needed to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Quinton. Any quick questions, Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, thank you for your very specific recommendations, and you mentioned a couple of crossings which you would like to see retained as raised crossings rather than level crossings. And I wondered, more generally speaking, what do you think are appropriate circumstances for crossings to be raised, even though it may be more costly to do so?
Yeah, I actually wondered that myself this morning and went to the NZTA website to look at their guidance, which has been withdrawn because it's being rewritten. So that didn't help me. I think if I think about the ones in Toka and Tane Street, they're very high pedestrian movement, lots of preschool and primary kids, and quite a lot of traffic at particular times. And that's a conflict for, even though it's a low speed area, it's a potential for conflict and for higher risk. So I think those situations, rather than perhaps the average quiet suburban street. And then the other situations are the two I mentioned, where there's an arterial, high traffic, people with an expectation of going at 51 kilometres from A to B, the need to remind people that pedestrians have priority at a pedestrian crossing, and especially near schools and public transport, bus stops or busy stops or stations. So I think those are intuitively, some of the principles of what lies behind my thoughts.
Thank you, Quinton. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. See you all soon.
Next up, Anita Martel. Welcome, Anita. Speaking on the same item.
Hello. So my name is Anita Martel, and like Quinton, I wear a few different hats in the Taita community. Firstly, I'm a mum to my 3 kids. Secondly, I'm a community member, and I love Taita and the people that I connect with and I'm involved with in any given day. I'm involved with the local schools, the kindy, and I also help admin the community page. So I'm here to support 3 particular crossings in our community under the Avalon Taita Connections proposals while wearing all of those hats. And I thank you for finally considering 2 that are very important to me due to the hats that I wear on any given day as a mum and community member. And I also think that it's not just important for the Taita residents, but it's also important for everyone that comes into the Taita area due to Walter Nash, the stop banks, Fraser Park, and the river. So crossing number 1 is on Tane Street. This has been a big talking point for many years, I've heard. I once put it on the community page after I walked with the kinder kids, who are all under 5, to Walter Nash Stadium to attend an event. As part of their safety planning, they have to use a safe crossing to cross a road or find a safe way to cross the road to get to where they're going. On this day, while with the tamariki, it was raining, and of course I was a little annoyed and thought surely there has to be a better way to get to Walter Nash. So I don't understand why we can't have a crossing at this location, I said to myself, that you are considering today. Taita Central School have also don't have a library, I've learnt. They currently use Walter Nash as their library and currently cross where this crossing will be, with parents and teachers standing on the road stopping cars, making sure they can get across safely. When I asked the community about it, they said they have asked for it multiple times and it's way overdue. With Saturday netball, college basketball, futsal tournaments and other events happening at Walter Nash, finally feels like a basic safety measure will be implemented. This street and section of road is very busy most of the week. Number 2 is the crossing at Partridge Street. My children attend Pomari School, and it's a great little school. Currently, there is no safe way for my kids to cross the road and get to school safely, even though they live on Biddle Crescent, which is a mere 10 or so houses away. Nor is there a safe way for many of the students that live on Reynolds Street or Molesworth Street to cross. If you were to visit the school currently, there are trucks and cars that block the views. And the school just last Monday held a board meeting and asked how can we together ask for a crossing for our kids to walk to school safely, and how do we start advocating for that? And I've also heard from parents who live on Biddle Crescent, if there was a safe way for their children to cross, they would let them walk to and from school themselves. Again, this feels like a basic safety measure that should be implemented, just not at my son's school, but all of the schools in Lower Hutt, to break down the barrier of getting kids to school safely. I would encourage you to keep the crossing raised. It currently is. There's 2 raised crossings, 2 raised humps on Partridge. The raised parts are already there, and keeping the kids more visible should be a priority. The raised crossing also helps slow cars down. So please keep and make it a raised crossing and help the kids more visible, not less. The third one is the crossing at Harcourt Wirry. Not doing anything at Harcourt Wirry to me seems a bit narrow-minded. This is a well-used recreational path used by many with bikes, prams, kids on balance bikes, walkers, dog walkers, runners, and I use this road a lot while driving to get to Lower Hutt. And with the constant stream of cars, it's hard for anyone to cross from the Tyder Drive stop bank to the stop bank along Fraser Park or vice versa. This could be an amazing link to the river and for people to continue their fitness. I'd also like to see a continuation of a safe way to walk to the river from the stop bank. Ideally, a path going down. If I went around the room and asked you to recite your pepeha, I'm guessing the majority of you would say Te Awa Kārangi is my river. So while you're connecting Taita and its communities together, I feel there is a disconnect of connecting our community with a safe path to the Awa. Thank you again for making Taita safer. These will be fantastic additions to everyone in our community.
Thank you, Anita. Really great public comment. Any question from members? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just coming back to your last point about Harcourt Wirry Drive, what do you think would be the ideal setup there for people to cross the road?
So I would like the crossing where Harcourt Wirry and Taita Drive meet. So there is already a path that connects, and many times I have wanted to stop for people, but then of course you can't, one car can't stop when there's no crossing because everyone else just keeps going. And I especially find it on, I only see it on Thursdays, but on Thursdays a whole lot of kids are playing Ripper Rugby at the moment. So many communities, if they could just walk across, and even on Saturdays for softball, cricket, but there's just currently no safe way to get from one side to the other.
Yeah, I understand that you want a crossing there, but is there a particular kind of crossing? Like, do you think a regular pedestrian crossing would be sufficient there?
If people stopped, then maybe. Yeah. I mean, I think either. I think ideally raised is better because people have to slow down. Like, people don't want to damage their cars, they'll slow down for the speed hump. If you put it as a level, you just have to make sure that people were aware of it. Because I think for so long we've just been so used to just driving. I mean, the safety things are somewhat already there. I think there's a barrier. I feel like there's a barrier on some sides.
Any other final questions? No. Thank you very much, Anita. Really appreciate it. Well done. Cool. Okay, that is the conclusion of public comment. So we'll now move through to item 4, which is the mural statement. First off, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the recent opening of the Moira Neighbourhood Hub and the Motutawa Avalon Skate Park, 2 fantastic additions to our city. And it's been great to see the amount of people in our local communities and in the region, particularly with the skate park, utilising those facilities. So can I just acknowledge all of the people who have been working to get those projects up and running, particularly with John with the skate park and the crew there through Riverlink, of course, and of course Andrea, your team with the Moira Neighbourhood Hub as well. Looking ahead, we're expecting to share some more updates on Riverlink in the coming weeks. As we know, this is the biggest project our city will ever experience, certainly in our lifetimes, I suspect, and the biggest project in our region as well since Transmission Gully. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with all of you on that, but we'll be able to provide a bit more detail to our community in due course. As you all know, based on the meeting before, we're at that time of the year where we are going out there to consult with our community on our annual plan. As has been said from the start of this process in what feels like, September, October, Jenny gets us in there nice and early. This is a light touch engagement, and we do need to be really clear with our community around what that means. And I think that as we are out there engaging with people, we do need to be clear that this is really continuing on with year 2 of our long-term plan, which obviously undertook a significant amount of community engagement as well. I want to acknowledge the work that's been done in looking to bring the proposed rates increase down. It hasn't been easy to do that, and I know there has been some tough decisions. Despite these efforts and shaving some of the, I think about 0.6% or so off the rates increase, we know that there will still be significant affordability challenges for some in our community with any increase, given the current economic climate. I certainly heard that in a recent visit to Grey Power last week, where you can see, particularly for those members in our community who are asset rich and cash poor, rates, insurance, those types of costs are becoming a very serious burden on people in their day-to-day lives. Something which unfortunately is really challenging for us to be able to take into account with the tools that we have in local government versus obviously the levers possible at a central government level. Just to say that while we are going through that, I do sometimes get emails saying from people that they do want to sell up and move somewhere else, to go maybe to some utopia which doesn't have rates. The reality is this is a challenge up and down the country, and there are even councils out there facing significantly more increases or have a higher base of what they charge in rates already. So again, it's so important for us to remind ourselves that while it is difficult, this is a challenge right across New Zealand at the moment. On that note, we are of course also consulting now on our local water done well, and that is going to be one of the biggest changes we can make here at council to how we deliver our water services. And while it is a critical conversation, we have been clear in what we view as our preferred option in trying to improve how we deliver those services and do it in a more affordable way than what the status quo would enable us to do as well. So really encourage you all again to get people to engage with that and let us know their views. And finally, on a more celebratory note, I would just like to congratulate and acknowledge Councillor Chris Parkin, who told me yesterday that he is not quite official yet, but he has gone through the process and will be a JP, Justice of the Peace. And I believe you just now need to go through the formal ceremony and swearing in of that. But I just want to acknowledge that achievement. And I think all of us who aren't JPs will be sending everyone your way for support and help. So no, it's something that which is often desperately needed in our local communities, and so and also takes up a lot of time for those who choose to do it. So really do want to acknowledge that. Okay, that is my mayoral statement. Moving through to conflict of interest declarations. Any conflicts to declare? No. Okay, committee minutes with recommended items. Traffic subcommittee from the 20th of February, page 13 of the agenda. We'll have the deputy chair of the subcommittee, Councillor Dyer, to move the adoption of the balance of the minutes.
Kia ora, I'd like to move that the minutes of the Comedy Iti Arawaka Traffic Subcommittee meeting held on the 20th of February 2025 be adopted. These are pages 13 to 22, with the exception of items 5A to 5J.
Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Now, with all of the other items are we comfortable to move them in bulk, or is there anything separate that members would like to take? Bulk, okay? Yep, Councillor Dye.
Cool. I'll move items 5A through to 5J.
Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Just saved about 10 minutes there, one team. Just for you, Councillor Briggs. Item B, which is the Communities, Culture and Partnerships Committee from the 26th of February, and that's page 33 of the agenda. I'd like to invite Councillor Brown to move the adoption of the balance of the minutes.
I move that the minutes of Komiti Hapori Ahurea me ngā Rangapu Communities, Culture and Partnerships Committee meeting held 26 February 2025 be adopted, pages 33 to 44, with the exception of item 5.
Seconder for that? Councillor Morgan. Any discussion? All those in... Oh, Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, I had a question on this paper, if that's okay. I don't serve on the Communities Committee, and when I was reading through the minutes, and it was to do with the public comment about community halls, there was some comments in there that indicated, and I didn't have a chance to go back and look at the agenda paper, a shift of booking systems, of those halls being shifted onto council's booking system. I was just wondering for a brief explanation of what's proposed there.
Through you, Mr Mayor. What's proposed is that we, as part of the discussion with the 3 groups who we're talking to, that we talk about that as an option, with the goal of optimising the bookings. Currently, the booking systems for those halls are mostly manual and involve getting hold of someone by phone or email, a volunteer person. So we think that there's probably some gains to be had around optimising the use of the halls if they were on the booking system, but we want to have that conversation with the groups involved before we make any decisions about that.
Thank you. And the reason I was asking, and perhaps this could just be noted, is that I know that Team Nainai Trust, who are operating Te Mako up in Nainai, have spent an inordinate amount of time looking for a booking system with the understanding that they couldn't use council's booking system. So if there is a possibility for that to happen, I'm sure it would solve the problem for them as well.
The initial rollout of the booking system was for council managed facilities only, so that we could get that part up and running, and there was always an intention to look at other facilities later on, and so we'll include them in that.
Okay, so all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to item 5, Councillor.
So item 5, Hutt City Council Cemeteries Future Focus, which is on page 35 of the agenda, and that's to put the consideration forward for the next annual plan, long-term plan.
Okay. Any questions on that particular item? Comfortable? Makes sense? There was a good discussion about it at the committee level. Okay, so it has been moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parkin, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee, Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, I move that the minutes of the Komiti Ratonga Rangatopu me te Rautaki, the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee meeting held on 11th of March 2025 be adopted. Those are on pages 45 to 54 of the agenda, with the exception of items 5A to 5C.
Seconder, Deputy Mayor Lewis, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Now I'm just wondering if we want to take A, B and C as bulk. Or if you wanted to speak to them, each of them. Was there any questions for any of those specific items? No? Okay, maybe if you just want to briefly speak to them and then we can... Yep.
Sure. So item 5A was to do with the 2025 local elections, and it was really just a decision to put the names of candidates in random order on voting papers. Item 5B is the review of the appearance industries bylaw 2020, and it's just approving a draft amended bylaw to go out to public consultation. Just noting too that there's been some really good pre-engagement work done with the industry on that one in particular to inform the draft. So it's a second round of consultation there. Very similar with item 5C, the review of the dog control policy and bylaw. There's been some work done already. There's now drafts with changes to those two documents. I do have an update here for members of the committee. From officers, thank you, Sam. Following the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee meeting on 11th of March 2025, officers sought legal advice regarding Council's authority to manage dogs in Korokoro Stream within Honiana Te Puni Reserve. Under the RMA, Greater Wellington Regional Council manages waterways, including Korokoro Stream and Lower Hutt. However, as the stream is within Hutt City Council's territorial boundaries, under sections 10 and 20 of the Dog Control Act 1996, Council has the authority to implement measures to control dogs in both Korokoro Stream and the wider reserve area. Officers have reached out to Mana Whenua to get clarification on their position regarding how dogs are managed in Korokoro Stream within Honiana Te Puni Reserve. So that was a particular, one of a few particular items that came up for discussion, and just an update on that one. So yeah, the recommendations are there just to approve the draft material to go out to consultation.
Great. Any questions on those three items? No? Okay. So, Councillor, are you happy to move those in bulk? Yep. Seconded by Councillor Edwards. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to page 142, which is the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the minutes of the Komiti Hanganga, the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee meeting held on 13 March 2025 be adopted at pages 142 to 160, with the exception of item 5.
Seconder, Councillor Stallinger. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 5.
Yeah, item 5 relates to the unnecessary and expensive for ratepayers rule change from the government in terms of how we handle speeds past or reduce speed limits. We had very good presentation from Eastbourne residents associations urging us to use an exception to that new land speed rule if there has been significant land use change next to the road where the speed limit is proposed to stay high. And we considered that Tupuru, Horonuku and the consent requirements gave us an ability to use that exception. So we have a recommendation that the speed on Marine Drive stay at 50 kilometres an hour, and our officers will work with schools, some of which have multiple gates, to come to a sensible, some sensible solutions around the new speed limits around schools. So I'm happy to move those recommendations that are on page 146.
Just before we move and second them, John, do you want to just explain for all of us practically what these recommendations mean on the ground?
Thank you, Mayor. So in terms of practically, there's a few steps that we need to do. So we'll be going out to schools next month with, which then councillors will see the letter first, but just basically setting out the requirements of what we need to do and providing a map of and the updates for their school or what it actually means. So at the moment, some of schools have got a couple of 100 metres of 30k before it goes back up to 50. So, and then what that would look like in reality once these changes come in. So once we've got that, we need to confirm those speeds by the end of May and basically update the speed limit register from the 1st of July. The effective date for most of these changes won't be the 1st of July because firstly, we don't have any funding to actually implement the changes. And I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but it's in the high $300,000 range for all of the signage and all of the changes to be put in. So that's the first thing is we don't have that. We have applied for funding through NZTA for at least 51% of that, but we still have a gap. So we're going to need to work through that. Lots of new signage. I think we won't be using sort of electronic signage just because, I mean, the cost for that's obviously a lot higher, but it also means any time, like sometime in the future, these changes may go back the other way. So we don't want to be having to spend money to go any further money that's not necessary to go back and forward. So what we would be looking to do is implement the changes as funding and resourcing allow, but they wouldn't all be done by the 1st of July. And obviously there'll be a bit of work involved with some schools. It might be fine, but some schools may need, who have multiple entrances onto multiple different streets. That may take a little bit longer to be able to implement.
And John, just so for clarity, would it be the case where we would not legally change the speed limit of an area until we actually can practically implement it by having the money to replace the signs and the likes? I suppose we don't want to be in a situation where legally the road has been changed, but then the wrong speed limit is up there, or we're just trying to cover it up, or yeah.
So so when we go through the process, we would have an effective date of when that change would occur, so that we won't be in a situation where it goes to 50 on the 1st of July, but we can't put the signage in until March 26 or what have you. So the two will be tied in together. The change will occur once the signage and associated communications and engagement have been completed.
So I'm sorry to labour the point. So in that case, if we had an area which maybe didn't have the funding until June 2026, we wouldn't change the legal status of that road until June 2026. Is that correct?
That's that time frame, Mayor, is we'd need to clarify that because that is quite a long period of time. So the expectation is as soon as practicable, but realistically, we won't be able to do them all because we don't have the funding or the resourcing to do that by 1st of July. Early 26, late 25 may be more practical.
I've been also liaising with our relationship manager at NZTA and explained that in fact what we have is an unfunded mandate. So we have a direction to do things, but without the money to go through with it. And that in the there is some money, but not all of it. But in view of the fact that we have to do everything, then there's at least half an unfunded mandate. I explained that it was likely that you as elected members were likely to say that you were not prepared to deprioritise other community things that you had identified, and you would get round to this appropriately and in due course, not shirking, but fitting it in with that. And that meant that our speed limits would only change as and when those signs changed, and that may take a good 12 months later than when it should have been, given where the money is. And they understood that we simply needed to let them know that's what we were doing, provided we were getting on with things. They understood that's the position we were in, if that's helpful, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora, through you, Chair. Question for John. What are we doing with the signs after we take them down? I.e., are we going to ensure that we hold on to them in case, given the level of community pushback that I'm already hearing from this, that this is not a popular change, this is not keeping our children safe, the schools are not happy with this, the parents are not happy with this, it is likely to change back, and can we hold on to the signs so we don't waste the money?
Through you, Chair, yes, we will hold on to them for future use when we need to change them again.
Councillor, I don't really want to open it all up for questions because some of these issues are being sorted out, talked about at committee. But Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question around the communications around it. I think we're getting some clarity today in this meeting, but I know that the nationwide comms that's coming out from government may not be aligning to the actual reality on the ground. And just a request to yourself, Joe, around that communication being clear from our council to our community around what that means, so that there's no misunderstanding, that we're clear on what we're doing and how we're going about it.
Yeah, as this unfolds, we'll get as much clarity as possible and pass it on. I think it is unfolding with our NZTA colleagues, but absolutely noted. And yes.
Okay, so Councillor Edwards has moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stellinger. Just to make a comment that talking to colleagues around the country, this is an absolute shit show, to be quite honest. Like, I don't usually use that word, but what the position this has put councils in, where We have spent, I think, over $400,000 implementing these changes from the previous government, to now have a situation where all of that is being rolled back at a similar cost is outrageous, particularly given there is no funding for this from the government as well. A total, as the Chief Executive said, unfunded mandate. We know how challenging it is actually to roll out these types of changes generally, and the education and communication and the practical side of doing all of this. To then do it all again is taking councils away from all of the other work that is absolutely necessary in our community. So I certainly will be articulating, maybe not with that S word, but to the local minister about this and those concerns as well. And who knows, maybe we'll see some common sense one day from governments when they change, not to put councils in this type of position. But yeah, it's simply not good enough, and it's important that we make clear that that's the case. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just to make a couple of comments. The first is that this is a complicated exercise currently with no funding to it, but I hope we can still take a common sense approach to changing those signs at the most appropriate time, and the most appropriate time for me would be over the summer holidays. And it was a bit more complicated last time we rolled out, and it dragged on for quite a while. But I think if new places if we could aim for at least the start of the new school year, it'll make it easier for people to get used to. The second comment is to do with funding, and I understand we've applied for funding and we don't know yet whether we'll get it. And I guess this applies particularly if we don't get any co-funding from government, to go about this in a way that is cost effective. I saw a video over the weekend with the minister responsible for changing speeds in his own neighbourhood, kind of gloating about a sign being changed, and it was just a sticker with a different number on it over the top of an existing sign, nothing more complicated than that. So I hope that we can kind of do this in a cost effective and simple manner that has the least impact on our communities.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, moving through to item 7, which is the Community Connections Program. This is on page 2 of the supplementary agenda. Paul, would you and John like to come forward on this one? I'll pass it over to you.
Kia ora, councillors. So you have a paper in front of you today that I just want to have a chat about first. So we went to Infrastructure and Regulatory a couple of weeks ago. From there at that meeting, we'd taken the designs from 2023 when the project was stopped because central government funding under the then Climate Emergency Response Fund was ceased. And had done some value engineering by reducing the number of raised crossings, or basically taking pretty much all of them out. So we were requested as part of that meeting to take another look and add some of those crossings back in. Unfortunately, there's been some process failings in that between either leading up into the last meeting in terms of providing the quality and the amount of information required, and then since then. So we're in a situation where if we focus on Avalon, there are, councillors wanted 5, I think raised crossings put back in at key locations. And we've heard during public comment some support for those as well. So there's still a little bit of work to do to be able to put them back in order to progress. The designs are substantively the same. There's a couple of other minor things, and if we look at tighter, we'll take Councillor Duffy's suggestion there around working closer with Greater Wellington on that, around that connection. So we will be looking at that. We'll bring that back at the next INR for approval around the designs for the tighter side, including Harcourt Wherry. That will include most probably need to include a speed review, which will be challenging. And putting raised pedestrian crossings to connect to the river, which is probably the safest way to do it, we need to work through how we may be able to do that, and there might be a period of time because there's quite extensive requirements on speed changes now to get them over the line. far more cost-benefit analysis, et cetera. So that one will come back. As councillors know, we're ready to start enabling works on the Avalon project and are basically ready to go. We need a little bit more time to be able to confirm the locations and the form of what those crossings look like. So are they ground level, are they dual, or are they raised? We'll be looking to bring that back in the next couple of weeks. There's a recommendation that we'll go through shortly. So firstly, apologies for the information flow has not been as we would have liked and the quality of that information. So outcomes are still the same with this program. We're still obviously going to intend to deliver the best of our ability. We are ready to go, but we just need to confirm a couple of locations. High Street and Oxford Terrace are particularly challenging, and Paul will kind of talk a little bit about those shortly, and just making some changes to line up where crossings are with existing off-road paths so that everything connects. I'll just hand over to Paul just to add a little bit more around the crossings.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. The team have been looking at the raised crossings, particularly in Avalon and around Taita, and have used a multi-criteria analysis to look at where should we have raised crossings, where should we have at-grade or level crossings. That criteria has included aspects such as the environment the crossing is in, pedestrian movements, the classification of the road, that's considering particularly the arterial roads, where there's been some pushback for having raised crossings in those locations, where FENS have said they don't like them there, that delays them getting to emergencies and the likes, and also complaints from residents where on the arterial roads, the high volume roads, there's a lot of cars going to dump over the raised crossings day and night. So there's a lot of pushback from those. So in those situations, we've proposed not having raised crossings, but the decision will sit with the council. In the situation like around Toka, Tane Street, as Councillor Duffy referred to, we are looking to retain the raised crossings in that location because you do have a lot of pedestrian movements across the road. So there is a reason for having the raised crossings in those situations. And with respect to the environment as well, we've also looked at areas where there is natural traffic calming. So on Walters Street in Avalon, it becomes very narrow, which will naturally slow vehicles down already without the need for having the raised crossings in those situations. As has been referred to at INR, a lot of this has come about through the government statement for land transport, the government policy statement, which has said we don't want raised or any subsidised money to go towards raised pedestrian crossings, recognising this is not subsidised work though, so putting it to council for a decision on the raised crossings.
Thank you, sorry, Mayor. Just to conclude, the focus is obviously around making our streets safer, and to do that, we're doing what we can with a range of different crossings and different engineering solutions to be able to make the streets safer for our tamariki and whānau to get around, to walk, bike, scoot, or what have you, to and from school, train stations, etc. So just on the raised crossings, and this is something we need to do a little bit more work on, around on the main high volume roads, and that's, with fire and emergency, strong feedback around not having raised on, we'll say Oxford and High in this situation, yet they are the highest volume roads, they're the most unsafe for our tamariki and whānau and trying to cross those roads. So we need to do a little bit of work on those in the next week or so, and then we'll bring them back for just to explore a little bit more. So that's the dilemma. We're also hearing, from some Metlink bus drivers are kind of talking around that as well, around the difficulties around some of the raised crossings in certain places. So we're just trying to balance all that, but safety for us as needs to come first.
Councillor Salinger and Councillor Parkin.
Yes, thanks for that info, John. I agree it is a dilemma, and I think the officers have done a good job with the compromise that's before us in trying to balance the safety, getting around, whether it be bike, pedestrian or motorised vehicles. I'm just wondering, and this may be the sort of thing you're looking at and coming back to us, with the likes of High Street, and we've heard the concerns from various people about getting across there, but it also being an arterial route. Are there options other than raising the crossing, which will definitely cost some more, but may provide enhanced safety without slowing down too much those large emergency vehicles? Central area refuges, like sometimes they have the narrowing of the crossing path by bringing the footpath out a bit, lights that flashing or whatever, those kind of options. Are they the things you'll be thinking about? Or is it just making a tough call one way or another?
Yeah, we will be having a look at a number of the options that where we are proposing to revert from a raised crossing to an at-grade crossing, what additional options are available to us. Lighting is one of them. Again, there is pushback on lighting as well, so is there other options available that, in terms of the design we can put forward, that would appease the speed of vehicles.
So I understand this is predominantly, especially on those high volume roads with High and Oxford, that we'll look at that in those situations. So yeah.
Sorry, it's Councillor Park and then Councillor Mitchell.
Kia ora. So a couple of questions. One, if the part of the project that needs work with Greater Wellington Regional Council can't be resolved within this financial year, do we have the capacity and can we hold the money over to complete it in the next financial year?
Through you, Chair. So the money's split over the 2 years, over this year and next year anyway. So.
And the other question is, have we or do we have the option of putting in optical illusion-based crossings? I know they've been successful overseas. I don't know if New Zealand legislation allows for that.
We would have to check the design options against the traffic design rules, first and foremost, which guide what we can and can't do.
Okay. Councillor Mitchell, then Councillor Briggs.
Yeah, just another kind of overlay that might be useful when we're considering, when you guys come back with revised proposals. One is the speed limits and the other one is functional speeds of roads. And I went and took a look up around the proposed Taita route the other day and realised that Tane and Toka streets are both currently 30 k's, but Tane's going to go back to 50, right, once the school change thing happens. So what will be the speed limits on those roads? But also, do we have any speed data on what functionally their speeds are? And I went there on Saturday morning, so you were lucky to crawl down Tane Street with all the cars and illegally parked cars and all those other things there. So it'll be interesting to see what functionally some of the speeds are of these roads. And in infrastructure and regulatory, I talked about Walters Street and how I'm quite comfortable for crossings on Walters Street not to be raised because I know it to be a slow street because it is narrow, not very busy and things like that. So it'd just be interesting to see those layers and how things may collide.
Through you, Chair. So we can definitely get the data around the speeds. Won't be within the next week or two. It'll need to be over a prolonged period. But completely agree with Tane. I get caught there as well on a weekend in terms of being able to move. So yeah, no, we'll come back around the speeds. The other option we do have is once all this is done and dusted and the speeds have changed, is we have advisory speeds as well as real, but we don't want to complicate with signage.
Councillor Briggs.
Just kind of drawing our attention to what will happen post-implementation. And as we know, often people have very bizarre behaviour when there's traffic calming or other interventions put into our roadways. And so what's the timeline after full implementation for review to look at what the other unintended consequences have been, and if there's any other areas that are now more unsafe due to people now taking side streets and back roads to avert the traffic calming that's put into place and the new crossings as well?
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. So we'll review within 3 months and see how they're going, and then obviously come back later in the year after that. And then once the Taita project starts, and you'll hear more about that in the next round. We'll check back in as well at similar times.
Okay, final one, Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, is it possible to see what the new recommendations are? Because that might influence what my questions are.
Yeah, great. Yep. Moves. Okay. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Councillor Mitchell.
Are you open to amendments just on the language of those ones?
Sure.
Yeah.
Always.
Because I think the issue with me for number 4, and as I raised it in infrastructure and regulatory, was with the designs. So I think that it says there, a proven principle, the updated designs, and then goes on to say to enable construction. I approve in principle to enable construction to commence, and then it goes on to say about finalising the design. So I think if you just took out the updated designs part, so it read, approves in principle for the Community Connections Program to enable construction to commence and gives blah, 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 authority to finalise designs.
Yep. I think that says a similar thing. Yep. But just absolute clarity of it. Comfortable with that, John and Paul? Yep. Okay. Okay. Anything else? No. Okay. Well, we'll move through to these recommendations now. So with those amendments, I'll move recommendations 1 through to 4. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Edwards. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Recommendation to Council from the Annual Plan Subcommittee of the meeting we just held. So this is just moving the recommendations which we passed. So I will move that. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis. Any discussion?
Just noting that at the Long-Term Annual Plan Committee meeting, I gave some reasons for voting against that, these recommendations. I'll do the same now, but I hope that those are matters which I feel more comfortable about, and with the passage of time through to the final plan being adopted, we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll move it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan. Any discussion? Sorry, I've already done that, haven't I? Do I already have a seconder? Deputy Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Morgan. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. And we'll have that noted. No from Councillor Stallinger. Okay, I can declare that carried. Moving through to item 8, which is council minutes. Now we have the 4th of December, 10th of December, 16th of December, 14th of February, 24th of February. Now, is there any issues around the correctness of those minutes? No? Okay, so I will move all of those as bulk. I have a seconder, Councillor Briggs. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, now what we'll do is move to the committee minutes without recommended items, and we have just a second, sorry. Yep. Yeah, great. Okay, so if we're comfortable, we can do items 9A and 9D through to 9G as a bulk, and then we can also do the Hutt Valley Services Committee and Wellington Water Committee items 9B and 9C as a bulk as well, but they're just noted. So we adopt the previous ones and then we note those later ones. I'm Councillor Briggs.
Just for 9E, I do have a couple of edits to note.
Yep. Okay. So generally, are we happy to do those as a full bulk, and we'll do it by exception? Yep. So Councillor Briggs, 9E.
Yeah, so just for the committee kaupapa tai of the Climate Change Sustainability Committee, Two edits, noting first that the appointment of Ray Moo from Hutt Valley High School as the new panel member replacing Tol So on the Low Carbon Acceleration Fund panel. And also two, noting that Karen Young's name was misspelt in the officer's report, and the correct spelling is Karen Young with Y-U-N-G.
Got it right this time. No, thanks, Councillor Briggs. Okay, is there anything else from those items before I move it? Okay, so I'll read it out. I move that the minutes of the District Plan Review Committee, Long-Term Plan, Annual Plan Subcommittee, Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, and Audit and Risk Committee subcommittee meetings, items 9A, 9D to 9G, be adopted, and the minutes of the Hutt Valley Services Committee and Wellington Water Committee, items 9B to 9C, be noted. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mitchell. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. I declare that carried. Okay, we move through to the Ceiling Authority, page 268. I'll move recommendations 1 through to 3, seconded by Councillor Briggs. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Questions? I've received no questions. We'll move to exclusion of the public. I will move that the public be excluded from items 13 and 14, council minutes and committee minutes without recommended items. Seconded by Councillor Briggs. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Declare the public part of the meeting closed at 2:57, and we'll just give ourselves a 2-minute break to